But that's what they feel. They feel like the good guy who the mid 45-year-old woman or man or whatever with a gun to protect themselves or is an outdoorsman.
There's something to that,
that's
but you
the problem.
don't get to do everything that you want all the time when you want it.
But
These are legitimate regulations, and if they feel persecuted,
and Tom,
that's a consequence.
But do you think, as the vice president said today to the Senate Democratic Caucus, I can't guarantee you that these massacres are going to end.
Does that have to be a condition before any gun control? Does it have to be something that will end these massacres?
Listen, no, because you can never prove that until you actually do something, and that's why I think it's worth having the conversation. And that's why when Governor Cuomo, took the steps that he took, listen, I think it's worth it for a child. If we can save a child's life, then it's worth. Listen, if somebody can't have 40 guns and they can only have 30. Well, then I say then that's okay. You
mentioned Governor Cuomo. It's worth noting he dropped 15 points on his approval rating just after introducing the gun control measures that he went through. That gives you some idea, I think, of how intense feelings are about this issue and how much of a voting issue this is. This is the kind of issue that does bring people to the polling booth, correct?
Michael, tell him why his numbers dropped. His numbers dropped very simply because of this fact is that his numbers were around 70 because many upstate, not so much conservative, but center-right Republicans were supportive of him because they felt that he really had brought the Albany dysfunction better. He had done a great job economically as a fiscal conservative.
When you start forcing decisions and making decisions and choosing one instead of the other because you can't choose both, you're going to alienate some people. 59%, by the way,
is a great number.
Is a great
number.
59% is still sky high.
It's a home run.
It's way above the 50% threshold. But I just want this one question answered because I really want an answer to this. Please, if it's possible. Well, if you're an outdoorsman, and I don't know if you are, but is it hunting when you're shooting a deer with a rifle, an automatic rifle that can shoot 10, 15, 25 bullets?
But you can't do it, Dominic. You can't. You can only have a magazine of 5. State econ law says you can only have a magazine of 5. That's all you're allowed to do.
But what if you're not in New York State? What if you're just talking in Tennessee?
I don't know. I don't know what the laws are there. But again,
is that outdoorsman?
But wait a second. You got to remember is that you think of being a hunter as going out to shoot a deer. They're not going to shoot a deer and going. Boom. There are different type of pheasants, et cetera, that you're having these AR-15 with very small caliber bullets. You can't, you need a magazine, one, they're very hard to shoot, and number two is that you need these type of bullets because otherwise you'll blow the damn pheasant to shreds. It's a very complicated issue. It's not a question of just going out there and spraying down bandly.
It's not complicated if you're the pheasant.
But, well, again, and if you have to shoot that many bullets to hit the pheasant, you're not a great shot. I want to get to another aspect of this argument, which is the cultural aspect. It hasn't gotten quite as much attention, but one element of the cultural aspect is something along the survivalist mentality, and it's the theory that the public needs guns in order to be prepared if the end of the world or a disaster or a natural or man-made...
No, the government.
Or the government.
That's what it is.
Both Wayne LaPierre and Senator Lindsey Graham expressed this point of view yesterday.
If you look at why our founding fathers put it there, they had lived under the tyranny of King George, and they wanted to make sure that these free people in this new country would never be subjugated again and have to live under tyranny. I also think, though, that what people all over the country fear today is being abandoned by their government. If a tornado hits, if a hurricane hits, if a riot occurs, that they're going to be out there alone, and the only way they're going to protect themselves in the cold, in the dark, when they're vulnerable, is with a firearm. And I think that indicates how relevant and essential the Second Amendment is in today's society to fundamental human survival.
6 bullets in the hands of a mother protecting her twin 9-year-olds may not be enough. She emptied the gun, six-shot revolver. The guy was hit 5 of the 6 times. He was able still to get up and drive away. My question is, put your family member in that situation. Would I be a reasonable American to want my family to have the 15-round magazine in a semi-automatic weapon to make sure if there's 2 intruders, she don't run out of bullets? What if there's an earthquake out here and there's a lawless situation? In 1992, you had the riots in Los Angeles. I think it was the King event. But you could find yourself in this country in a lawless environment through a natural disaster or a riot. But I think I would be better off protecting my business or my family if there was law and order breakdown in my community, people roaming around my neighborhood, to have the AR-15, and I don't think that makes me an unreasonable person.
Okay, so there's two things to touch on here. Let's start with the natural disaster, which seems like they're preparing us for Thunderdome. You know, is that
ridiculous.
Is that just off the wall?
It's ridiculous. And Senator Graham, I really believe if he represented a gun control state like New York, he would, and if most of his money came from New York, he would have exactly the opposite position on guns. This is ridiculous.
A politician with that sort of flip-flop on?
It's not a New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Florida, California, Illinois senator that's saying this. As I've said on this program before, the issue when we're talking about guns is not just about guns, it's about the role of rural life outside suburban and urban areas in the American narrative, in the American story. And sometimes it's not really about guns.
I want to get to this government tyranny aspect, which you mentioned right before we played the clip, and the Second Amendment seems to speak to that. But I seem to recall a group objecting to government tyranny in the 1860s or so, and I don't think that ended very well.
Right. No, I mean, look, I think that argument's ridiculous for this reason, is that the federal government today has arms that if they wanted to come take over the people, they would take over the people rather quickly. This isn't 1776, where a militia could rise up and fight the United States Army at that point. I mean, I think that would be a battle. That's not a battle today. So that argument goes out the window. But I'd like to go back to the other point, because Michael hit the nail on the head. What we forget is we live in an area here that if we need a police officer, there's one around the corner. They're minutes away. We don't live in the middle of Idaho. We don't live in rural South Carolina, where an intruder can come into your home and the nearest cop may be a half hour away. And so, sometimes we have to put ourselves in a different situation and understand when Lindsey Graham talks like that, we don't hear the stories every day, although there was one recently, I think in Indiana, where a woman who was with her child climbed into an attic and had her husband's gun and shot the intruder. That's the thought process. But the idea that we're protecting, we need to bear arms because the federal government is ridiculous.
But none of the regulations proposed, even at their most stringent, would keep that mother or that homeowner or that business owner or somebody defending their rural property from a bear attack from actually having arms. If New York City were a country, it would have the 10th largest army in the world. So I absolutely agree with you that it's no longer, it hasn't been for a long time, about government. If government wants to do something and NYPD wants to do something, they do it.
But and we're just about out of time, but this idea of defending the rural area, do you need military-style weapons to be able to do that? And if not, how do you convince people that they can do it with rifles, shotguns, etc.?
You know what? Well, what is? I'm still waiting with this military. I mean, I think we focus so much on the looks of the weapon, okay? And then when you talk to gun owners and they explain what this weapon actually can do, as opposed to what it looks like, that it looks cool or whatever. I mean, if you have a Glock semi-automatic, you fire off 15 rounds in a matter of seconds. I mean, so if you have a little handgun that can go bing, 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 and fire off 15 rounds, is it any different than the AR-15 that can do the same thing? I think we get caught up in the looks of stuff, et cetera, et cetera.
This is why this debate is so complicated.
Right,
and
it
why
is.
I'm a little pessimistic that we're going to get anything done
I
through
agree.
all this. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we head to Capitol Hill, where Chuck Hagel got a grilling today. We're going to tell you why he's facing tough questions from some of his former colleagues. Stay with us.